4.
48-hour art check, 120 something. Either three or four.
They go too fast.
It's in the
It's
mid.
123.
Okay,
123. I just looked it
123.
up.
It's in the mid
Yeah.
20s. It's in the mid 20s. All right.
Dude, so I'm still mystified. Can you believe we're getting towards 125 episodes? This is like more episodes. We're going to at some point catch up with Artcasters. That's insane because Artcasters has been going long before, like for
Yeah.
years. You know,
Right.
that's
No,
nuts.
that's weird. That's super weird.
Yeah.
I was looking at the Joe Rogan podcast, and it's like over 1,000 episodes or something, and I was like, man, that's so many. And then I thought, a couple of years of 3 times a week will do that. I mean, you get there pretty quick. So
Yeah, it happens fast. So more encouragement to join us in the 48-hour art check out there, folks.
yeah,
All right.
do it. Okay, so what'd you get done in the last 48 hours?
I did rough pencils for 2 panels, and there's a little bit of wonkiness that on my second pass I'm going to have to fix, especially on the left arm of that superhero character at the top. So, but I'm excited. I have some momentum, and yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Cool. And you're on
Hmm.
a you're about to go for a style change, right?
Yep.
In the
Yeah.
book? Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm about to be done.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so when this arc of the story is done, the first book's done, and then I got to figure out what the hell I'm gonna do with it. And I'm hoping if I do like plot a Kickstarter like or something like I Facebook doesn't go out on me or something, you know.
You don't happen to have any copyrighted characters in there, do you?
I don't believe so.
Okay, yeah. It's another pitfall.
Yeah,
uh,
I'm pretty cautious with that. So there's mentions of a copyrighted character, but it's also clarified that like it's not the copyrighted character.
right.
So yeah.
That's
Yeah, that's a
funny.
good point. That thing got pulled, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was partway through his longer video explanation about it
Oh
earlier
man.
today, but yeah, we should do an episode about that. That'd be kind of interesting
I would
at,
love to.
at some point. Yeah. So for me, um, I got a bunch of photography done and got some images optimized and got my website up and running. So we now have half color and half ink, which is a little bit more accurate than what it was before, which is all color. So I've got some ink in there. So now you can kind of see it's more indicative of who I am. Um,
Yeah, that's actually really cool to kind of see in the group there, you know?
yeah. And you can click on each one of those and they get bigger and whatnot. And then I found this half finished drawing that I had done. And so I'll probably finish the rest of that. But I went through not so much art stuff, but a ton of like organization and like I have like flat files that I was like moving stuff around, getting rid of stuff, and found some things that I thought I had lost. So that whole thing that I never do, where you never stop to like organize and clean stuff up. So I did
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I'm a little jealous. I don't know exactly when I'll do that because I'm definitely one of those organized chaos types, and
Right.
so that definitely that hits a weak point just hearing about it. Because I'm like, yeah, I know exactly. In fact, I probably know too much.
Right.
All
So
right, yeah,
yeah. How about
that looks great. You guys should go to Cory's site, CoryKerr.com, and check that out when we're done streaming because it looks badass. So yeah.
yeah, check that out and let me know if anything's broken because it's not a brand new site, but it is. I added some stuff and I'm going to rearrange some stuff. I've still got some work to do on it, but it's
Yeah,
good. It's good. So
that is great.
how about challenges for you?
Um, my challenges have mostly been just try like you just kind of have to exert yourself as a manager sometimes, and it's been quite an ordeal the last week, and then just missing my kid and wife, who are very selfishly visiting their mom, who's going through some sick stuff. So I'm joking. It's not, it's
Yeah.
like the most selfless thing in the world. But I do get, like, I'm thankful we live in the age we do, because I get to FaceTime a lot. And so that's cool. Like, we FaceTimed
Right.
storybooks today, and that was really fun. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm at that point where I'm like, I enjoy the freedom to kind of get all the art done that I need, but I miss the plug that kind of gives me all the energy, like, or the outlet or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
about you?
For me, it's probably make more sense in the discussion we're gonna have, but mostly certain attitudes that seem to be more prevalent this semester are kind of boiling over. It's just kind of interesting to watch what's going on. So a little bit of what we talked about last time with
Yeah.
people taking critique and not taking it well and giving excuses. There's another one that's kind of doing that. And then just like time, like today, for example, right as I was about to put my daughter to bed, some friends came over and like to just drop something off real quick, and that was 90 minutes, and then I just barely got down here. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, just life. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a balance, man. I've had, well, I mean, as we all know, like, I've had times where I couldn't even get to the art check. So it's
right.
cool. It's what's amazing, Cory. I think now, statistically, I think you've hit the art check more often than I have. So there's a little accountability on myself. I
But
should be doing the art check, feast or famine, rain or storm. But yeah,
yeah, you haven't missed it
admire.
for weather though. It's been like I can't talk right now because I'm sick. So,
Yeah, that was a problem.
yeah, it's you could sit there and just nod. It's
True.
a
And if
challenge.
you guys
Challenges.
backtrack, just to show what I'm talking about with Cory. I mean, Cory's done the art check after he had to put a lance through his ear. I mean,
Yeah,
he is committed. So, anyhow, just saying.
committed, committable. One of the I don't know. Should be committed. One of those things. Yeah. So how about plans?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to get like two more panels, rough penciled, and then actually tonight I'm doing something totally. Oh, Scott's in the chats. Hey, Scott. Um, uh, I'm hoping to kind of do something creative that has nothing to do with a project of my own, but a friend of mine who's a high school art teacher. He's amazing. He's like one of the most creative people I've ever known, and he has to build a bunch of puppets. And he was like, "You want to like hang out and make puppets?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
That sounds awesome.
And this is a little known fact. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but when I was a kid, I had a best friend. It's actually the friend Jake that I'm writing this about in this, who taught me how to cuss. But around that same time, we got like obsessed with these puppets because we had a teacher who had us make puppets, and we'd make like straight up like Jim Henson type puppets, like ones that were like life size and stuff like that. And even did like a puppet show for a talent show that we got in trouble with the principal for. So anyhow, all of that came back when he was like, "You want to make puppets?" And it's like, puppets. Yes, I do. Thinking about just hours of like, carving like foam and stuff to make these silly puppets and stuff. So anyhow, I think
That's
it'll be fun.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah. Scott supports my puppet thing. Yeah.
I
I'm gonna
feel
shill too. Actually, I'll just really quickly shill. If you like puppets, get a print on Society 6 of Puppet Checkup, one of my most popular designs. But okay, now for you. So Cory, what
um,
about you? What are your plans?
I am going to keep working on my website, continue to get ready for that show, which means probably designing one or two more pieces of apparel. And then I want to organize what I'm bringing as far as if I'm going to bring like cards or like branded stickers, because I think that's cooler than a business card. So stuff like that is kind of
Dude,
where I'm going to be. And then I'm just kind of taking it easy a little bit until I kind of jump into the next thing. A little bit of client work.
I love it.
Yeah. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
Matthew's in the chats. I don't know if we've ever shouted out Matthew Enstrom's amazing 48-hour art check video. He called it like the 100 and what was it wasn't 48 hour.
So 168.
Anyhow, yeah, 178. That's it. And it is. I like don't even want to describe it because there's an amazing kind of surprise in it. It's hilarious. It's a really I don't know. The guy's a genius.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Check it out.
cool. Oh yeah, unbelievable. All right, so yeah, so do you want to talk about kind of selfishness? Let's talk selfishness.
Okay.
I want to hear. I want to hear your. I want you to handle most of this because you're fired up. I want that fire on tape.
Okay. Yeah. So today's topic is selfishness and being self-serving and how that will absolutely destroy you in the marketplace. So I have noticed several types of attitudes in kind of the upcoming generation. And so I teach, and that means that I get to interact with awesome students. And one of the reasons that I really enjoy teaching is because one of the things about industry is everybody gets really burnt out and tired. If they work certain types of jobs for a while. And I was in a place where I had some awesome people that I was working with. And I also had some of those lifers that were just like resigned to their fate, and that's just what they're going to do until they died. And it was like so draining to be around them. And so then I started teaching, and then there's all these students that are like, yeah, let's go get them. And it was really awesome. Also though, on the flip side, you also get people who are in their 20s that are still trying to figure things out. And there have been some incidences in the last, couple of semesters that have gotten me kind of fired up. And there's some stuff that kind of brought this up recently where I'm thinking, I really want to explain how this works. So if you are kind of out to get everything for yourself, right? There's a huge downside to that. And the downside to that is that you are going to be a person that no one wants to work with. Okay. And I do believe in being in relationships, and whether that be a business relationship or a partnership or a romantic relationship or whatever, that are balanced, where there's a good exchange of value. Josh and I are in an art check relationship, and I feel like I give value into that situation. I feel like I receive value in that situation. Right. And so it never feels to me like a drain. It never feels to me like I'm unbalanced. And that's because both people are receiving value. Okay. So I'm not talking about that, but what I'm talking about is if you have a specific attitude of like, well, what's in it for me? Or if you go throughout life, always trying to do this. Now here's something that kind of happened, years and years and years ago, where, luckily this person took it well, but I remember I asked somebody on my team to do something. And we were at a small company, and at small companies, you've got to be very agile, meaning you wear a lot of different hats, you do a lot of different things. And I said, hey, so-and-so, would you mind doing this thing for me? I need you to do this. Come back and tell me how it was. And then he said, that's not in my job description. And so I ended the meeting right there. I said, so-and-so and I are going to have a talk. Everybody else I'll call you back in if I need you. And he kind of was like, uh-oh, and I said, listen, you can pull that if you want, but that'll be the end of your time here. Like if you want to pull this job description crap, and be really, really letter of the law with how you interact with this company and with me and whatever, that's a really selfish way to look at things. And I can tell you right now that while you might not get fired, you definitely will not enjoy the rest of your time here for several reasons. One is that just tells me that you want to be an order taker and you never want to grow, you never want to stretch, you never want to do anything more. And so if you tell me that my job description is X and you don't want to do anything outside of X, okay, I'm never going to give you anything outside of X. Even the fun stuff, even the stuff that you might want to grow into, the stuff that you might want to be promoted into, it's just not going to happen, right? The other thing that it tells me is that you're not a team player, right? And I only work with people who are team players because we can't afford not to. We're understaffed. We're doing way more, than this group of people should be able to do. And I don't have time nor the inclination to deal with somebody who says, well, my title is X, not Y. And it's like, well, you know what? The work needs to get done, and we're on a team, and we help each other. And so there was this whole thing. And luckily that individual, stepped it up and said, yeah, I'm sorry. I will do whatever. Another time, there was somebody who was constantly trying to get everything in writing. And it was this idea of like, will you give that to me in writing? Will you get that to me in writing? And I was like, I'm just asking you to do something, right? I'm not throwing you to the wolves or anything. If it doesn't go well, it's obvious that it's my idea. But also, if you are constantly looking for things to fail and constantly looking for the way out, you're not a team player. You're looking out only for yourself, and that attitude is probably going to cause what it is that I asked you to do to fail in the first place because you expect it to. So again, not a team player, whatever. And so it just comes down to this. Now, on the flip side of that, the other side is the person who is not selfish. And I'm not talking about being selfless to a detriment, where you are so giving that you're working too many hours, you're not getting your job done, you're not having your needs met, you're doing too much, and you kind of just run dry in the amount of giving. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you see somebody that needs help and you have the ability to do something about it, you do it, right? You see something that is outside of your job description and somebody on your team needs you to help lift something that they're lifting, you lift it, right? Yeah. And if you see something that needs to be done, you see some help that you can do, you see a way that you can improve somebody's life, and you don't see any direct benefit to you, I can tell you that there are a numerous number of indirect benefits, but that's not even the point. The point is that you are a human being, and so are other people around you. And if you treat people like human beings, there's this magic thing that happens where people stop looking at everybody with a mean and hungry look of what can I get from them or what are they going to do? Because the selfish person looks at everyone as either a sycophant or an attacker. And if you are if you are only going to view the world through how can I use this person, or how is this person going to victimize me, then you are going to live a short and miserable life where no one will work with you. No one will want to be on your team. No one will want to help you. And you're just going to burn out. And then you're going to do stuff like this, which drives me crazy. I get these surveys that I do for students. We had 600 students take the survey, and everybody's super happy. They're really excited. Like 80% of the graduates are working in the field that they wanted to work in, all this stuff. And then you get that one person that is like, this degree's terrible. I can't get a job with this degree, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't think it's the degree, man. I think you're probably just either useless or you're a jerk. Right. And so, but it's never my fault. It's never my fault. It's got to be somebody else's fault. And so it's this whole thing that just drives me crazy. In the art world, or in anything where you are trying to produce creativity, being selfish about that is the worst tact that you can take, because the best definition of networking that I've ever heard is it's not who you know, it's who you've helped.
Yep. That's a good point. I think that's all incredibly good advice. And it's funny because I also just want to take the sort of standpoint of, cause I 100% relate to that. But I want to take the kind of counter standpoint a little bit by saying some of those negative qualities are also signs of immaturity. And so a lot of that gets worked out of people as they work their way through the industry,
right?
And get a little more battle hardened and a little wiser about what hills they want to die on, and what particular things they do need written and things they don't need written. And once again, like this is the hardest part. And I wish more, like when you brought up the counter problem, I wish more people developed this skill sooner. Unfortunately, I think for people like Cory and myself, like type A personalities, it's like it's definitely one of those things that's really hard to learn, and you can only really learn through experience, which is, you have to know your limits. And the only way you learn your limits, this is the hard part about it, is by testing and pushing your limits.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, a lot of the time the way to learn it is you have a couple burnouts, and then you're like, hopefully learn your lesson through a couple burnouts, and learn when you actually have to say no, because that's a valuable skill in a workplace too.
Yeah.
Especially with like the type of leader or teacher I am, I'm going to push someone to their absolute capacity. I love doing that because I love seeing people grow and flourish. And that's honestly one of my favorite draws to like leadership and teaching and mentoring. And even honestly, even like the advice we occasionally give on these shows, like seeing people grow and flourish or take on challenges and defeat them. It's like one of the most, when you're a part of a team and you do that, that is like this, it's like this existential joy. And it's very brief, but it is one of the best feelings you can get in the planet, being like, here's a team that did it and like actually all collaborated and made it work when it seemed impossible.
Yeah.
And I see that like, I see that with like the team that like Mike is kind of heading up with the Hundreds anthology. It's like there's this crazy goal and everybody's been kind of going 110%, and this thing's going to be cool because of that. So I don't know. But yeah, I think the only other thing I'd want to chime in just with is just I agree. Like,
yeah,
that's a valuable lesson. And the way you've worded things, I mean, obviously you're a communications major, so you always have a real gift for that. But it is a rare and kind of fascinating and inspiring thing. I might borrow some of your language.
Yeah, and I mean, like I've thought a lot about this because I used to be an objectivist
Mm-hmm.
with Ayn Rand and that type of thing. Very short period of time.
Oh no!
When I was younger, and so I feel like a lot of that type of thinking is really prevalent when your brain isn't fully developed. And now I'm going to offend anybody who likes Ayn Rand, which I'm okay with. So anyway, like The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged and things like that, there's a lot of really interesting and good ideas in those books that I agree with. But in addition to those, there's also this idea that everybody should be out for themselves and that selfishness is what drives the market. And so you shouldn't make a decision that isn't completely self-serving. And the idea that even altruism, where you just genuinely want to be a nice person and help other people when you have the opportunity, is super self-serving. There's a huge problem with this is when you are looking at people as things, when you're looking at people as ways to, step up or whatever, it becomes problematic when you look at relationships transactionally, because as much as I believe, and I do believe this, that friendships are an exchanging of debt, an exchanging of obligation, right? That somebody does something nice, you do something nice back, and you trade that back and forth. But as soon as that friendship becomes like, well, let's see, I did 3 nice things for you, and you've only done 2 nice things for me, so you owe me.
Count. Yeah. And actually, that brings up just the fact that you're bringing up the count that happens with that kind of personality. And I will I'm going to admit to, like, there have been times in my life where I've had moments of thinking of things transactionally like that, and they've never been rewarding.
Right.
Which is and rewarding, I mean, like for the soul. I don't know if that makes sense. It just kind of leads to a lot of resentment. But one thing that I'd also tie into that is like, that also happens to be like a huge factor in mental illness, where one of the big tricks of mental illness is list thinking,
Right.
So like if you think about like depression, people are making a list of all the events that have happened terribly in their lives. And I try to kind of pinpoint some of that type of thinking in my comic. Um, because it deals with, you know, like depression. And but then with like anxiety, it's a list. It's a list of all your fears and all the possible things. And it's this list of like, and if a fear happens, it's a fear of, oh, it's another one of those things. Another, it's that kind of mentality of, instead of taking things in the moment and kind of experiencing them and getting over them and dealing with whatever's right in front of you, it's like this very list based thinking of like all the infractions that people have done and all the good that people have done. And that's just not how people or timelines work. And we're going to have to pinpoint the Ayn Randian thing, because I have all kinds of issues with Ayn Rand. But there
Yeah.
was a point when I was in like maybe seventh grade where I read Atlas Shrugged and I was like, this is pretty smart.
I
And
wish I
when
was
it,
that young when I liked it, but I was way older.
well, that's okay. There's a lot of the populace that does, and I think there are things that are appealing about it because it's like, you know. But once again, I don't want to offend people who are fans. But I would say, like, I just think that when you think about just the point of the title of the book, the idea that there are people who the world is balancing on the shoulders of,
Right.
and that if they shrug, the whole thing will collapse.
Yeah.
I think that right there is just a sign of slight mental illness, because if anyone views themselves in that way, they might be a little, like, they might be looking at themselves with a little too much. Um, uh, I don't. It's hard to explain, but it's like,
No,
I guess.
I can take it from here. The
Yeah.
idea is that our perception of things, we often mistake our perception as reality, when in
Exactly.
fact our perception is one of millions of ways at looking at reality. There is an actual reality, right?
Yeah.
None of us are actually capable of understanding it. Like, you're not actually seeing light, right? That's
Yeah.
not how your perception of visuals works. What happens is that there are rods and cones in the back of your eyeball that
Exactly.
translate things into electrical impulses, and then your brain invents from those electrical impulses what you're looking at. That's not actually how things are. The same thing
Yeah.
with your hearing, right? It's just vibration of your air that goes into your ear canal that moves your eardrum around, that turns into an electrical impulse that your brain invents. And
Yeah.
from the same aspect of that, like the Gestalt principles of psychology, of, you know, the psychology of perception, our best guess on how we perceive things isn't even really that accurate and can be easily tricked. And beyond that, you're not omnipotent. You're not
Yeah.
omnipotent and you're not omniscient. And so, because you don't have all power and all knowledge and you're not everywhere, you have
Yeah.
a very small fraction of the information that you need to make these big giant judgments. And so a lot of the
Exactly.
things that you are making these judgments on, you don't realize unless you check yourself. Well, that's what I perceived, but that's not necessarily what everybody else perceived. And
Yeah.
if you never check yourself and you never say, what if I'm wrong, which is a
Yeah.
normal thing that most mature people are capable of doing. I'm not using age here, I'm using maturity. Most mature people are capable of saying, it is possible in my mind to be wrong. It is also possible in my mind that I can be wrong, and that it does not diminish my self-worth or my
Yeah.
ability. It just means that I perceived something differently, or I didn't have all the information. And from that, then you can start understanding and empathizing with what's going on. But if you feel that your perception is reality, then you will start to think that the universe is there because of you and to serve you, and
Yeah.
everything exists, you know, and then you never think, well, maybe actually I'm just not that important in this particular scenario. You know,
Exactly.
maybe the person who cut me
That,
off in the freeway didn't intend to ruin my day. They have no idea
yeah.
that I exist.
Yeah. And I think actually I just wanted to jump in because that is a really good point. And weirdly enough, this is just like my own experience, but it's like when I've had like throes of like really severe depression, one of the biggest, like most comforting things that you wouldn't imagine is comforting to think is to realize that I'm actually not that significant. I
Right.
don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I think that a lot of the time when people kind of exaggerate reality, um, or like I've definitely witnessed this with artists who like it's a very selfie endeavor. It's like you have to really engage with your own mind to create this thing, and it's very internalized. It's an internalized process. But one of the dangers with that internalization is if you internalize your own reality.
Right.
Like and I think that I've seen that with young artists, especially young artists, where they'll internalize their reality like I made a drawing, I feel good about it, so therefore the whole world should feel good about it.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case. Like because like going back to the Atlas Shrugged thing, it's like not just titans of industry are balancing worlds on their shoulders. Like most people are balancing heavy burdens in their lives,
Yep.
and the second you get that, it makes you, at least for me, it makes me like way more prone to be kind to people because I don't know before I approach someone whether they just lost a family member, whether they're going through some financial struggle, whether they're having family or marital problems,
Yeah.
whether like they're, whether they had a terrible childhood. Like you don't know those things about people when you're approaching them, and you don't know if like the person like who's maybe slow at service at a restaurant or something, maybe instead of them having a vendetta or the restaurant being a problem and everything around you being a problem, maybe it's just like that person had like one of the hardest days at their job or something, and
Yeah.
that's why that's delaying. Or maybe there's a food delivery problem or something like that. The point being, like, it's just not all about you. And that's the second you can kind of grasp that as a human being, it becomes really freeing. And
Yeah.
it's weird because it's counterintuitive to what that kind of mindset tells you, because the kind of mindset that's stuck in the very self, uh, it kind of will fool you to think that it is all about you.
Right.
And so any other, which is, and once again, it's a natural struggle because we're all kind of trapped in ourselves
Yeah.
and incapable of actually traveling into another person and kind of seeing from their perspective. But when you mentally start trying to do that, just trying to kind of like, okay, I'm angry at this situation. I'm going to step back, and what would this look like if I were in the other perspective? That ability is a really hard thing to teach. It's a hard thing to develop as a person, I think. And I definitely can say having a kid, it's not natural. We're
No, it's
not born
not.
that way.
No, I think
Um,
I think most human beings for the first 3 or 4 years of their lives, and I don't mean this as an insult,
yeah.
are fairly sociopathic.
Oh yeah.
And I don't mean that as an illness or as a disorder. What I mean is almost don't have the ability to empathize with any other viewpoint other than their own. I mean, at the very beginning, it's like, I'm hungry. Why isn't anyone feeding me? And you lose it, right? And then as it moves on, your world is so small that you basically, before you go to school, like two people, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 3 or 4 people, but you don't know hundreds of people. You don't even know 20 people.
Yeah.
And so it seems like there's these adults that just continue to do things for you all the time, and that's perfectly normal and natural, and that's how the world should be. And so then you get into kindergarten and you're like, what are all these other kids about? Like, I mean, the world is about me, and you spend the next 12 years trying to figure out maybe that's not the case as your brain is
Yeah.
developing. I want to bring this to art because I find this fascinating.
Yeah.
This is another way of looking at this.
Okay. We got like 1 minute.
Okay. Selfishly, if you create something and the endorphins are firing, you've got dopamine and serotonin because the process of creation, releases all kinds of fun chemicals in your brain and you have a good time creating something, and then you show it to someone and they don't like it, if your reaction is that they are wrong because your experience was good, then you're missing the point, right? You might have enjoyed creating that thing, but that does not objectively make that thing good. And so
Exactly.
taking a moment to say that that person's opinion might have some value to you,
Yeah.
even though they disagree with you, you might say, well, you know what, that person's opinion could be valuable. I wonder why they don't like it. And then you
Yeah.
bring this back to storytelling and you can say, like, if you can understand people who think differently than you, then you
Hmm.
can write and draw some really interesting stories. But if everyone agrees with you in your story, if everyone is some sort of facet of your personality, that's a really boring and a fairly selfish story that isn't going to really get off the ground.
100%. And like, so this is something that I've thought about a lot, considering it's autobio, that I've been delving into, because the risk of autobio is always like coming across as some insane narcissist, you know?
Right.
And I've read a lot of autobios like that, where it's like somebody being like, I walk down the street and I'm right and I'm always right. Oh, isn't this person terrible? You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so one of the ways that I tried to kind of prevent the self from getting too kind of self-aggrandizing was to actually like try to exaggerate, if anything, like not gloss or paint pretty pictures of what I was like at the time I'm writing about, but instead like exaggerate my flaws, particularly in the stories that deal with like more adulthood type stuff, and not the childhood ones are a little more whimsical.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things that I think if you're gonna get into autobio, at least for the type of brand of that I like, it's you know, and I've mentioned this before, but one of the things that makes R. Crumb so fascinating as a cartoonist, especially when he delves into autobio, or the stuff he did with Harvey Pekar, who wrote brilliant autobio, is Pekar does not paint himself well. Like, you don't get this great impression of Harvey Pekar and be like, I want to hang out with that guy. You're like, you get this really wacky impression where you're like, this guy has major mental problems
Right.
and anger issues, uh, and um and like, I think that's what makes it so fascinating to read, like American Splendor, is it, you know, it is that element of it. Like, it's pretty raw, and I think that's something to consider out there. Like, whether you're delving into especially if you're delving into autobio, but whenever you're delving into storytelling, it's like, do all your characters speak with the same voice? Do all your characters see things from the same exact viewpoint you do? Because that would be really bizarre. That would start feeling like a very strange, although that might be a good story, is like how weird it would be for a character to live in a world where everyone agrees with them. That would be like a creepy kind of Black Mirror episode.
Yeah. It
So
would.
uh,
I've got a great way to wrap this up.
yes.
So you tell those you decide not to be selfish and show your flaws, you know, in your work, and what happens is that other people relate to that because no one is perfect, and deep down we know that we're all flawed, and so when
Yeah.
we see realistic and authentic storytelling, we relate to it, and you build connections with other people rather than people going, well, that person sure thinks a lot of themselves, or you know, whatever. It's like, yeah, I can kind of relate to that. I've been angry before. I've felt sad before. I've, you know, been in love before. You know, and you tell those authentic stories in a real way of how you might be perceived by other people if you're being honest, rather than how you'd like to perceive yourself. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you got some traction.
Yeah, and to cap that, I just think there's a real strength to admitting weakness, and that's a hard learned lesson for like a manager, but it's one of those things, and a teacher. The inclination when you first get in a group of people is just to come across as a badass with like no flaws.
Right.
And what's fascinating that happens with a classroom where your class starts connecting with you is when they're like, "Oh, you clicked the wrong thing," and you're like, "I did. I'm an idiot," you know, and
Right.
they're like, it's surprisingly like they're way more responsive to that than being like, I know exactly what I clicked. And you know, like, if you double down on an error,
Yeah.
you always come across looking like a moron. And part of the reason for that is is the fact that you are exposing an ego that is so like walled off, and it does expose a lot of that kind of mentality that Cory's talking about. So I think, to me, I think that this is a really, man, I want to hit the topic more, but I got puppets to make, so we'll have to call it.
Okay, why don't you sing us out here, Josh?
Oh, okay. You can check out my work at quarterlystories.com. You can check out Cory's work at 48 Hour Art Check. And since he's in the chats and has a Kickstarter, I'm going to give a little shout out to Scott Cirkland. Go to youngandthedead.com and support his Kickstarter today. And if you're listening to this podcast, give us a 4-star review, and or if it goes to 5 stars, that'd be cool too. Or if you hate it, give us a 1 star. But regardless, give us a review on iTunes and check us out on iTunes, because we're putting podcasts up there. And that's it. Okay, the world is still balancing on our shoulders. I think we're good. Cory, are we good to go?
We're good. As long as I'm still the most important person, we're fine.
Perfect.